Hey Mario, founder of SkillMapper. Welcome and thanks for joining. It would be great if you could start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your business.
Yeah, sure. So, hi, Alexander. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm Mario Calderon, the CEO of SkillMapper. So, at SkillMapper, we are building a discovery engine for learning resources. So, we believe that nowadays there's so much content out there, and content has become a commodity. So, one of the things that's very hard is perhaps to put together what we believe are learning journeys. There's so much content being shared, but it's all spread around. So, at SkillMapper, we're building this in a way, Spotify for learning and development, where the community enabled by AI can put together learning paths that will help somebody that goes from 0 to 1. Let's say you want to learn tomorrow to become a product manager. You are able nowadays to find a path that will give you a lot of free content from YouTube videos, podcasts, and articles to start from 0 and have a decent layer of understanding of what it entails to become a product manager. And now you can replicate this to any role or any skill in the market. And that's what we're building at SkillMapper, this community and AI-enabled discovery engine for learning resources.
Going back, could you tell us a little bit more about your background and education and how you used to learn things?
Yeah, so that's perhaps how we all started. So I did a bachelor's degree in business administration, and later on, that was back in Peru, where I'm originally from. And later on, I had the chance and fortune to study in the Netherlands and Norway, where I did a couple of master degrees in marketing research and marketing management. And that kind of opened for me the opportunity to be exposed to this very international environment. And also being in Europe, I had the chance to meet people from all over the world and make these long-lasting friendships. And that led me to actually think that it would be a great place to start a career, a professional career. And after applying to many jobs, that was back in 10, I got a job at Facebook, or Meta nowadays. And I started as a user operations analyst. So in simple words, that was like reviewing content. And that's kind of like the job that, I mean, it's great to do it for a bit and starting, especially in such a big company, but you want to grow in your career. And that's where I would say how I'm answering your question. I started learning a lot of SQL, a lot of Python, a lot of skills that would let me to build like a strong foundation to become a data scientist later on. And how I did this was like, searching in Google, going through YouTube, signing up for Coursera, just, like putting different resources together. And in a way, that was the journey that I did on my own of discovery, where I went through different resources and was able to educate myself to, in the day-to-day, in the work, build a profile for data scientists. And later on, I became a data scientist at Meta. So yeah, that's a bit of story as well.
I see. I definitely got a similar experience to that because when I was at uni, after I finished, I did the same, learned SQL, all these things on Coursera. And yeah, it's great. And did you always know you wanted to start a business or did it just happen?
I think I always had that entrepreneurship bug in terms of like having ideas or problems I wanted to solve on my day-to-day life. But once I had the opportunity to start working for Meta, that was back in 2012, I put that on the side, even though I had multiple ideas throughout my tenure there. But I think towards the pandemic is where I really started reflecting on my prior almost decade there and say, okay, maybe, if I want to start something, this is the time, as the world was going through a turmoil and everybody was kind of rethinking and reevaluating what's important and ultimately what's going to lead, change in the years to come. And education has always been there, right? As I would say, the great equalizer in terms of like opportunities brought to people. So for me, it was a latent thing, like forever. And just during that period of the pandemic, it's something that I reflect and say, why not do it now? And why not going after something that has impact and where I see myself bringing something that's impactful and also putting together some of the knowledge and experience I had into something that will help others, right? And especially solving some of the challenges I had while learning on my own in a way that's scalable, in a way that could bring people together. And that's how I started in entrepreneurship, and I started with SkillMapper.
So SkillMapper was your first business?
I would say yes, officially. I had done a few side gigs, like let's say teaching Spanish where I was living in Norway, or I also built an online course during my time at Meta for an EdTech in Latin America, where I was teaching a lot of data science and analytics. So, side gigs, had a few like proper entrepreneurship or a company. Like this is the first time, yes.
So most entrepreneurs seem to fail quite quick on their first businesses, but it seems you've done really well with your first business. How do you think you managed that?
I mean, I would say
I don't want to tempt fate.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we've been surviving. I mean, sometimes, we've been for years in this. I've gone through different stages. We've been close to die a few times, to be fair. And also we've been rethinking and repivoting like strategy, especially in go to market. Yes, it's common to fail and fail fast. And I think success is a matter of time and resilience. And also it's a matter of perspective, right? I mean, over the last 2 years, we've been very dry in terms of like funding. I would say success was defined by surviving to many of us in the entrepreneurship world, right? Nowadays, as things are bouncing back and, AI basically touching upon every single like aspect of building businesses and entrepreneurship, I would say success is more about, hey, how can you be cost efficient at the same time driving and growing in the business? And we're not there yet. I feel that this is going to be the year that we're going to really take off. But if I'll go back to your question, how do you succeed or how do you perhaps thrive in this environment, which is absolutely challenging? It's resilience. It's having a clear North Star of why you're doing what you're doing as well. The why, right? Like why you're starting even this. I've started having or being surrounded by the right support group, people, team, investors that are there also to help you when you need it. So those are at least have been the keys for me to continue pushing for this. But I think if for the three that I mentioned there, having the passion and the drive and the belief that what you're doing is the right thing, definitely is the key of all of those.
You said you nearly died a few times. Like what nearly led to that?
So, number one driver of companies dying is the running out of cash, right? So now, what are the leading factors to that is usually, you set a plan and then you expect some to drive revenue based on different set of assumptions and things don't go as planned. So, and then you're running low in cash and then you cannot fundraise or you don't get the grant that you expected to get from the governments that might be supporting you. And this is very common in education, by the way. I would say education is the sector where, have a few very polarizing things that I found is like it has the best and most inspiring people working on this sector. One extreme and perhaps the lowest odds of succeeding it. So our story and the story of many, especially in this sector, usually you fail or you're close to die because like the assumptions you had going to market are not aligned with reality because perhaps the product takes longer to build and sometimes you die before even launching and because of those reasons or not having product market fit as well, you're running out of cash and you end up dying. So for us was a mix of those things. And we survived because we were able to pivot also because once we joined Techstars as well, which is an accelerator that infused the needed amount of capital for us to continue building and also kind of rethinking and repivoting into what we believe is the right solution for the problems that we're solving. So that's a bit of a story of why we almost die and how ultimately we overcome it. But yeah, the main reason usually is because you're running out of cash.
Yeah, always. I think the majority of startups either have founder disputes or run out of cash. And yeah, so you said Techstars. So how was that? What made you decide to join Techstars?
So we applied for Techstars in 2022, and the context was like we always been looking for opportunities for us to accelerate. Of course, as an entrepreneur, and especially with small team. I mean, back then we were about 5 or 6. There are things and things where you seek for support, especially in distribution. So we saw this opportunity to join an accelerator and apply to a few, and Techstars was one of our top options, and we were selected for the program that was run in Stockholm, where I'm currently living. And yeah, no, it was great in terms of like meeting other entrepreneurs that are going through the same struggles and also facing the same challenges. Also, we get the capital that allow us to continue building and moving forward, and at the same time, resources in terms of like connections, network, and education that help us just refining things such as your go-to-market strategy, even your product development and marketing. Especially when we were here in Stockholm, as we were new to the market, it helped us connecting to local entrepreneurs and also people in the tech space that later were very helpful.
And was it difficult to get accepted into the Techstars?
I mean, you never know the exact numbers, but definitely we know thousands of people apply to these programs, across the world, especially Techstars as it is a global brand. They say the acceptance rate, varies, but it will be somewhere between maybe 1 to 2 or 3%. I'm not sure of the latest, but yeah, it's difficult simply by the fact that the odds are against you and you're applying. We are one among thousands, but the process itself it's not difficult. You just go through the application, you have a few interviews, and they believe in you and what you're building, and also can see that you have the drive and there's a market opportunity, and your chances increase. And if you are lucky, you get selected and you become part of the program.
You have a co-founder, right?
Yeah, I do. So I'm the CEO, I'm my co-founder, CTO, and he's more involved in the technical development of the solution. Yeah, been working this since 2020, 2021. Yeah.
And like you said, education, EdTech's a very difficult market to crack. Like, you can have amazing products and amazing things, and you can still not succeed. Knowing that, did you know that initially? And if so, why did you continue to go into education?
I didn't know that initially. So in that sense, ignorance is a bliss, as they say. For anybody who's listening to this and thinking about starting a business in education, do it. I'm not going to stop you, but be very aware that if you know already odds are very low among entrepreneurs and even in technology, education is one of the most challenging sectors. You just have to look and reflect upon like who's out in the stock market, right? Which are the biggest like education EdTech exits, right? You think about Coursera, Udemy, Duolingo, Docebo. Maybe I'm missing a few more, but that's it. You can count them, the big ones, big names, household names. You count them with a hand. And of those, if you look at Coursera and Udemy right now, I think they're 80% down from the IPO price. So that paints a very daring scenario in terms of like your odds of succeeding. That's one thing, right? So odds are very low. I didn't know that. However, you can continue, going through that path or train of thinking. And nowadays, you can start a business and you have to think about an exit to the, to the stock market, right? So on the one hand, it's very, very unlikely to succeed and go to an IPO and have an exit and become a billionaire. However, there is, of course, a path in which you perhaps are bootstrapping and you are being cash flow positive, having a small team, being 5, 6 people, and doing something you love, right? Having great impact and paying your bills, right? Like, I think many of us, especially who are listening to this, if you're doing something you're passionate about, you can pay your bills, and you have a small team that you pick yourself, and you're happy working with them, you respect them, you think they're smart, and you do cool things. That's more than enough, right? Why aspiring for more? If you're looking for like the billionaire exit, definitely don't go there. If you're looking for something that combines you building something where you're passionate about, having positive impact, and picking your team and doing cool stuff, yeah, I mean, give it a try.
Totally. I think EdTech or education's amazing if you want to have impact and enjoy yourself. But if you want to be a billionaire or a $1 billion exit, you'd be crazy to do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that makes me think, you touched on how it can be good to just have a small 6-person team, be cash flow positive, etc. How ambitious do you think you should be? I know it depends on person to person, but like, and what makes you ambitious? Or
I mean, it's very relative, of course. It depends. Ambitious is defined differently for different people, naturally. You have to be ambitious, definitely, to start a business, I think, per se. Why? Because in many cases, the alternative is just to, work for a standard company, have a safe job, like safe payment monthly basis, and have a 9 to 5, 9 to 6, let's say, slot where you're working, or where you're not worried about the livelihood of other people working for you. So you need to have that drive and ambitious that makes you somehow different, or delusional enough that you will go against the odds and make something happen, right? So yes, there's some inherent ambition that any entrepreneur should have and must have to have some odds already in a game that's against you. Personally, yeah, I've always been very ambitious. I would say part of that drive started when I wanted to do a career outside of Peru, where I'm originally from. I achieved that through applying to different scholarships, where you have to believe you somehow stand out from the multitude. So, and then started SkillMapper. The ambition there and the drive, perhaps is something that other people can relate, especially in the sector of education, is the fact that you want to impact to the largest amount of people, right, that are going through this challenge, whether it's access to education, access to quality education, which will lead to opportunities in finding a job or entering the labor market. If you are perhaps in the space of language education, which opens the doors to perhaps somebody who speaks only Spanish, to go for an international career like many of the people I know did. Or maybe you work in the sector of kids, right? I've been talking to entrepreneurs, for instance, that will or are working in robotics, and how AI can help, having these companions that can continuously support the kid, not only at school, but also at home, especially those who have special needs, right? So you have to be ambitious, and you have to believe that there's something in you that makes you different to be in this space, for sure. But of course, the spectrum of ambitious might be different. Again, there are met those who are ambitious that want to go to an IPO and become billionaires, and I respect that. And there are some others that their ambitions are more related to the fact that, hey, I want to get just paid and pay my bills, and it's well build and drive impact. So just to ambition, but it comes to a wide range of quotas, let's say, in that spectrum. So yeah, that's how I think about ambition, drive. I'm very ambitious, but at the same time, I think different stages of your life as well modify that, what you consider ambitious and also that drive. So for us, I would love for us to impact millions of people around the world, and we're working towards that. But we'll see how it pans out, and hopefully, it's towards that big number. No matter what, if we continue doing this impact, we continue building, and we survive and thrive soon enough, I'll be more than happy.
And going on onto SkillMapper, obviously there's a lot of products out there for roadmaps to becoming a data scientist, roadmaps to becoming an AI expert, and then you've got your Coursera, your Udemy. There's a lot of resources out there. What made you think you could have a competitive advantage?
Yeah. So one of the things that a few things happening at the same time, and I think they started back when we started with SkillMapper. I think content is a commodity, and that's why you see Coursera, Udemy, among other players, even Check.com, that have significantly gone down, because they rely on content that somehow has been, sure, there is some, let's say, specific proprietary production, but you can find most of it in YouTube, right? Or for most of the part, 80-20. I think about the Pareto distribution, right? So in that space, today you can build. If today you will rebuild Coursera, you will do it with 6 people, right? You will do it with 6 people, you will curate the best out there in any format, right? Could be a podcast, could be a YouTube video, could be an article, and you will remix this data and build something that is 95% close to what a Coursera course is out there for 90% of the subjects that you find there. So think about the idea of curation and scale, free resources, and AI integrating and remixing everything to make it personalized for Alexander. Not this one-fits-all Coursera data science, no one-fits-all user design. Just an experience, a journey that has taken the best of the internet, processed it, digested, and personalized to your style in the shape or form that you like, and with the words and examples that relate to your day-to-day life or to your preferences. You love football. All right. So when you're talking about data science, we're not going to take a data set of like Bitcoin, right? It's going to be, hey, this is the latest data set of the Premier League, right? And these are the stuff that you have to look at the standard variation, the distribution of goals, right? Just because we know you like football. But if some other person loves tennis, we're going to have an example in tennis. And these small tweaks, when you scale it, they can make the delta between somebody engaged into like a particular matter or somebody just, giving up, right? And that's the vision that we have. Scalable curation of content adapted to your taste, to your preference, with a personalized journey for you that, and this is the kicker, brings the community together. So you're not doing it alone. You're doing it with other people that have found this path, that are joining with you, and that you can go and naturally encourage each other, like face the same challenge, go through a struggle together, and ultimately somehow beat the very low completion rates that this platform have, right? We're talking about 5 to 10%. Never gonna be delusional to tell you that, a platform like SkillMapper will bring everybody to 95%. But if you move, then the bar is so low that if you move it to 20, 25%, let's say, you're already making a huge impact. And that's what we believe we can do it with this platform and the pieces and the Lego pieces that we build in together. And we can do it for individuals, but also for companies that wants to train their personnel in a cost-efficient way. You need to, and again, one of the challenges that we discover, or challenges that companies face that we discovered through these like 4 years, is that many of them have budgets for like $200, $300. They're not being used by anybody, or they go to this library. Let's buy a library, let's say Coursera or Udemy or any other library, by the way. Sorry if I mentioned those names a few times already, but any other library. And what happens is that nobody uses it, right? There's a very low usage rate even, right? If you go to not even 2-digit numbers where you find these companies. So cost-efficient way to drive education at scale and personalizable. That's what we're building, and that's what we believe the future is.
So what would say be the difference between, say, I want to learn about football and data science, going to my favorite instructor on YouTube, or using your platform?
Yeah, so we believe a lot of the content is definitely in YouTube. That is, let's say, the content itself. But the elements or the layers that we're building on top that make us different is like ability to do assessments on that, ability to have like exercises on that, ability to have a community that's doing the same track with you in that particular video, right? So are all those experience layers that limits, or basically at this point, right, just make it a YouTube more like edutainment, right? In most of the cases, to an experience in which you are going through an assessment piece, a community driven, and let's say interaction and encouragement, and also elements that we're still building and thinking about that can gamify the experience for you, not only to go through it, certify that you've gone and you have learned the main aspects of that data science perhaps track, but also maybe get a reward, right? Or create some incentive for you to validate that you are skilled and that you could be a good asset for another company. So that's where the other path, I would say the models, let's say the future comes in, right? Like, why do you study? Why do people study? I mean, I'm asking you.
Say two reasons. One is to learn. Two, because they've been told to by either a school teacher or work.
All right. So, okay, let's go through the first reason. Why do people learn?
I would say generally I can think of two reasons. One, curiosity, just to improve or just to learn out of curiosity. And two, normally when there's an end goal in sight, so like an exam or something like that.
Right. So that's kind of going through like school, right? When you were a kid, let's say a teenager. Okay, like if you continue in that path, why do you keep learning after you finish school?
I would say the majority of people don't, but most people that do would normally to improve their careers or just they're curious. That would be the two main things I would think.
So to let's say improve the career prospects and get a job in the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say if you have to make like quick stats, I mean, you're in analytics, right? Of all the people, let's say, going to university, let's say, which is, I don't want to say is what could be in the world, like eligible age, maybe 20%, 30% goes to university, perhaps. I mean, I'm saying, in the lower range. For these people, 99% do it for the career prospects, right? Right. So in that sense, and that's kind of the target that we're aiming for, like you do learn or you do commit to learning because you want to increase your career prospects and ultimately allocate or put yourself in a job, right? So I'm back to the point, like when you look at YouTube, definitely it's great. You might learn something quick, but in a structured manner where you validate that you have learned a particular skill, we see a future in this kind of validation certification that can help you getting that promotion or getting that job. Because ultimately for many of these people, especially those who go to YouTube to learn Python, they do it not for curiosity, but the majority do it because they want to increase their career prospects.
Yeah, for sure. I think people who are learning to code, all these things online, the majority will be doing it for career prospects. And then people who want to learn for curiosity probably be reading books and playing around with things, but not the same level of, like, I don't know, dedication and time commitments that you would if you're trying to improve your career.
Exactly.
And I think it's interesting you said about making it enjoyable doing something you like, because when I was younger, I used to try and learn things, and I hated school. I didn't get good grades because I found it so boring. And then when I got older, I learned to code, but I learned to code, like you just said, through learning about football and also the stock market, my two interests, and I learned to code very fast. So if you can do that as a product,
yeah,
I guess cracking that would help people really learn faster if they're enjoying it. And you mentioned about the completion rates. That's something I see across the board. Like, no one can get good completion rates. It's like, how would you incentivize that? Is there ways of doing rewards like Duolingo have done in the streak, like making it addictive? Or
Duolingo, for instance, is a very interesting case study, right? So if you listen to the CEO, which would be even a few podcast interviews over the last months, I would say, even some of them become very popular, especially among the educational circle. They kind of drop the ball on quantifying, the impact of Duolingo in your language, let's say, improvement. Not that they cannot correlate, let's say, usage and improvement, but what they see as a key metric is like you showing up every day. So that's why they kind of like build this addictive app, right? Which some, especially, and I give you both, polarizing opinions, those detractors who say it's a game, you're not learning anything. That's one side, right? Like, and the other side is like, hey, listen, at least they're showing up in a game that's intended to educate you. To be playing Candy Crush and playing Duolingo, using Duolingo, trying to learn a language. I mean, if you ask my kid, I have a kid, I would say, hey, I hope or I prefer him doing Duolingo, right? And back to your point of incentivizing engagement and completion. It's an approach, gamify to the point that you come and show up every day. Now, would that lead to a delta in, your acquisition of knowledge and improvement of skills? That's TBD. And if, the CEO from Duolingo listen to this podcast, in a few weeks, I hope they continue doing research, and I hope there's a delta that is, like proven among like not every user, but a significant amount, a statistically significant amount of users. But I'm back to your point of like, how do you, incentivize people to complete something? I mean, gamification is one of the ways. Two, if you can tie that completion with some kind of unlocking job opportunity, for instance, imagine. So you have to be creative here, right? I mean, there are things that can be done. It's like, hey, if you complete this, you make the assessment, you will be highlighted among top employers for you to apply for this job in particular. Three is the ability to have a community that you are paired with at the same time, with the same goals and with the same taste. You find the 20 people that loves data science and the Premier League, right? And they happen to speak English and they happen to be looking for data analyst roles in Europe. Commonalities you can programmatically set in a group of people and you put them together through the same journey, the higher the chances that this group of people will be, reinforcing each other for success, right? So why it hasn't been successful is because naturally our human, inclinations are to just drop the ball in many of the things, like every 1st of January, everybody wants to go to the gym and become fit, right? But how many of those last for more than a month or two? Like the majority will drop. There's no consistency. It's not showing up. And that's okay. That's what we expect. Back to the points that we discussed before. Are we expecting to go in completion rates from 10% to 90? No. We'll be happy, amazed if we move the needle from 10% to 15 or 20. Yes, any day. I'll sign it. And from that new baseline, you continue building, right? What are the things that you cracked that move the needle 5 to 10%? Okay, now what we can do better, right? Is it about job opportunities? About you having the right people next to you? Is it about gamifying everything? And annoy you with an animal, every day saying, hey, show up. Maybe that's a trick, we should do it. We'll find our animal. But I think a lot of hypotheses to be tested, no certainty, and nobody has cracked it, which means that, it's up for grabs.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you said about Duolingo and being able to research the impact, because I do think there is a real compromise between gamification and actually learning, because for me, using Duolingo, I don't think I learned a lot. I used it a lot. But what I would say is great, and the impact they have is that it's like a gateway, so they get you into language learning, and then maybe you go on to take tutors and that sort of thing. But the product itself, it's like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. I love that you say, right? It's a gateway for you to learn languages that could lead. It could be a lead factor to you traveling to that country and then saying, hey, like it's even easier to learn it here, but how you started because of Duolingo, right? Or chatting with somebody on the internet that speaks that language and then you more naturally start learning. So it's a lead. It could be a lead indicator, lead factor for you to succeed in learning a language. But its quantifiable impact, it's TBD.
And how do you manage to keep the depth of content to a good level? Because I can imagine starting, say, for example, I wanted to target data scientists. I wanted to release a data science course. I would maybe go for data science for football and really target football fans and go really deep into that in order to have a good product. I think if I tried to do it for multiple, it'd be too general. How do you manage to do that with multiple paths?
Yeah. So some of the things and blocks that I just mentioned, we're still building it. So one of them, like personalizing, let's say, to your affinities or your preference, something that we haven't built yet. That's kind of like this year's goal, no pun intended, to the football. But I would say it will come down to seeking, let's say, the most popular, using data, right? Most popular sports, most demanded skills, most demanded paths or roles, and combining those, making pairings, right? That allows you to address the highest demand combination, right? First, and then expand to others. Sure, you don't want to do all at the same time because you're spreading yourself too thin. That's how I would tackle it. Don't have more information because we haven't worked on it yet, but that will be the approach.
And how do you like to learn in your spare time or when you are learning? Like I know you mentioned you learned to code via YouTube. I'm just curious to know.
Yeah. Uh, I love, so it's throughout the last 10 years of my life. I learned a lot through reading. I love a good book, especially over last years, read a lot about AI before it was popular or became popular, you know. Uh, I remember this book called The Master Algorithm. I think it was published at least, I don't know, 10 years ago, that speaks about this, like what AGI is nowadays, right? This master know-it-all, like ultimately it's the closest to what's called a singularity, or the single entity that knows everything and can solve everything, right? And that opened up my mind into what AI could become one day, and how close to it we are, arguably, right? So that was kind of a rabbit hole. You start somewhere, reading a book, and then you go through videos, and then you go through podcasts. So that's how usually I learn. I get spark of something, or interest in something, and then I go through that rabbit hole across multiple people speaking about it, media where it's being shown, and then at some point I feel that I acquired enough knowledge that I could potentially, and many of the things that you learn, by the way, you don't put into practice, right? Like, I mean, as you said, curiosity would lead you to read about philosophy, right? And when do you put into practice philosophy? Perhaps in day-to-day actions where you make decisions, or in conversations where you are just sharing your point of view about something, right? But reading starts for me in curiosity that's been sparked by conversation with somebody, or by me browsing the web, or by me stumble upon some event, right? That led me, like, just go through that rabbit hole. I mean, I don't know, over the last years, I started, for instance, running, right? I really love running nowadays. And that what led me to read about, like, how to run in zone 1 and zone 2, right? Watch videos about it, listen to podcasts about it, right? And then now I'm like, okay, I have a decent knowledge. I know what should be my zones in running, and I put that into practice on my day to day to stay healthy. I think in many cases, and I would love to hear about how you learn something, or why you learn something, especially those curiosity driven events. It comes out of, like, just impromptu events that led me to that, and spur my curiosity, and I go to that rabbit hole. Especially for those things I, by the way, curiosity driven. For the more, let's say, work related, you know, uh, it's a combination of what I'm interested about, like what I like, my affinity. Let's say I always like data analytics. So that's how also I was inclined to go into AI. And also I look at the market, right? Like, okay, there's a lot of, like, need for applying, I don't know, generative AI and in product. So I start going through that particular branch, for instance, and get myself soaked into all information I can. Yeah, that's a bit of approach. And last but not least, speaking to people about it as well. You learn a lot by just sharing your thoughts and point of views with other people that are in the space. Most and the best type of conversations are in real life, right? By the way, not everything is on the screen. Real life conversations can teach you a lot, and help you learning something in a more natural way. So I would love to hear about you, by the way.
Yeah, very interesting. I think the same. Yeah, when you said about the zone 2 running and that sort of thing, I learned exactly the same because I like to play football and cricket, and that led me to learn about training, which then led me to learn about zone 1 and 2 running, and then I started reading books on health, and then I started me learning about the gut, and now I know about gut health and all these random things that I never intended to, but yeah. And then I started watching so many documentaries on processed foods, and like realizing like how bad that people always talk about drugs, alcohol, and these things, but the danger is in what we eat. So it's like there's so many, yeah. And I think it's sort of like just get something going. You read about one thing, it's like, oh, that leads me to that, and then that, and then that, and it's like going down the YouTube rabbit hole. I'm sure, like when I was a kid or younger, yes. I'd watch a YouTube video. I'd go to watch a YouTube video on like a football game or something, and then the next thing you know, I'm watching like rabbits fight each other. It's like, how have I done that? So yeah, it's just a chain of events.
Exactly. I agree.
But yeah, I think when I was younger, I underestimated books. I never really liked to read because I hated sitting down. But as I've got older, I've really enjoyed reading books. So like, I read a lot of books on business and data science. And then I think like a couple of years ago, I was reading too much on like my career, and I thought I need to widen what I read on, and then I started reading more philosophy, history. I think I think it's like really important just to be curious and learn different things, even if they're not necessarily that useful, because you just never know what you're going to learn, and you can connect the dots. I remember reading a guy, he was like a trader and investor, and he like made millions. He was really smart, and he said like if he catches any of the people who work for him in finance reading about finance, he gets angry at them. He's like, the answers aren't going to be in that obvious. Anyone can do that. You need to be reading outside and thinking outside the box. And he did a piece where he connected like musical notes to the movements in the stock market, and it's like, yeah. So I think that's my opinion. Yeah, just being very broad, varied, and just going whatever you want to do.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And I think one point that I love from what you said is like if you read what everybody is reading, or you are stuck into that like same funnel, there's no creativity that you could impregnate. And especially now with ChatGPT, you kind of like, you are all reading the same thing, or you are all processing. You need to connect things from totally other fields to spark some innovation. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. You always need to be doing what other people aren't, because like you say, it's like in like sports, like athletes, like there was probably a certain athlete who did a specific diet that no one was doing him, and that gave him the edge, or a sports club that used data science when everyone was making decisions on intuition. It's like, yeah, exactly. If you do what everyone else is doing, you just get the same results.
Exactly.
That's very important in business, sport, anything that's competitive. It's really important to try and think outside the box and do different things.
Yeah, and you mentioned something just to touch upon quickly. For instance, Sinner, who now is not playing. It's like a #1 tennis pro. He used to do professional alpine skiing, right? And they say one of his virtues or his edge is that he has this kind of stretch and mobility and also strength in the core that no other tennis player who has been only playing tennis all his life would ever have, likely, right? So it's those like cross, I would say, sectional or different like elements of experience that gives you the edge in a world where everybody's doing kind of the same.
Yeah, for sure. And you touched on having a child. How is that? I'm interested to understand, how is that running a startup, having a child, some real commitments?
Yeah, I mean, it's naturally challenging. I would say it's both. It's a source of hardship, but it's an infinite source of joy at the same time, right? So I would say it can make a day that's harder, but it can make also a day that is hard, like I would say go through, like flip you in your mood and in your spirit. So it's challenging to become or to be an entrepreneur and a dad, but as well, and this is perhaps even linked to the previous topic, like it gives you a range of experiences and of emotions, most of them positive, that also permeate, into your day to day. And I believe drive brings some additional creativity, drive as well on what you're doing, right? You're not doing only for yourself, but also for that little one that's there. At the same time, gives you a different perspective, right? When you need it. And that perspective also means that, like entrepreneurship is something amazing and driving things that hopefully last generations and drive impact in education. It's something that's very novel to go after. But at the same time, you have to not only focus on that legacy you want to leave, but in the now, and how you give attention to your kid and how you teach. Especially for those, imagine that work in education, like you're in this position where you want to help others educate yourself, but at the same time, you would not be that person who helps others educate yourself and you educate your kid, right? Like, or pay enough attention to your kid for him to be educated enough, right? So it's an interesting, I would say, in which you are, or context in which you are, in education and also having a kid, which the most important for the kid is education. And that gives you perspective, and at the same time gives you different drive and a set of emotions that have no parallel into anything I have experienced prior to him.
Nice, very inspiring. And last question. So I'm curious to know, like, if what's the best piece of advice you've given, or the best thing you've read, or best quote? Because I think for me, it would be like when I used to read, like I said, all the ways about business, thinking if I read about business, I'll be a better business person. And then I read a book called Almanac of Naval Ravikant, and it was saying there's no such skill of business. Like, you're better off studying maths, science, physics, and just then connecting the dots. And I think for me, that was like the best piece of advice or quote I've read. So I'm just curious, like, what's yours?
Yeah. I mean, one perhaps for entrepreneurs that are listening to this, it's more about like how you need to be, how you to be stubborn about your vision, right? What you're building, but flexible on how to get there, right? So, and very similar, it could be applied from the, I think it's YC, even Paul Graham, about falling in love with your problem, but not with the solution. I think in a way, there's a resemblance of this idea of like having a clear why, having a clear North Star on what you're aiming for. But on day to day, or even like in quarter to quarter, seeing, hey, what do we change, nowadays, not to derail from that vision. So that's something I keep in mind as well. And the other, perhaps I mean, there's no quote, or maybe it's more thing I learned. It's about having perspective, on life, and how I mean, if you're listening to this, you're very likely you're already very fortunate. You have access to Wi-Fi or the internet, maybe 5G, 4G, one of the Gs, or you have a phone, and have a laptop, and that puts you already maybe above what, I don't know, I want to be wrong here, but 60-70% of the population, right? I mean, how lucky you are already. Like, just pinch yourself, just get a grip, and sure, everybody has a hard day. Everybody wish more, but just be grateful, like, count your fortunes, and you will do better for sure. Every day is a new opportunity, and keep that in mind. Just a lot to be grateful for, and at the same time, if you put the hard work and and the plans aligned, I'm sure if you're an entrepreneur, things will go up into the right. We all hope for that, but you need to show up every day. So that's about it.
Yeah, definitely. It's important to not lose track of reality and realize how fortunate we are. I totally agree, and yeah, echo everything you've said. Well, Mario, it's amazing to have you on, hear about SkillMapper, hear about yourself, speaking about data science. Absolute pleasure. So thanks very much for coming on. Much appreciated.
No, thank you, Alexander. Very, very enjoyable conversation. And yeah, if anybody as well wants to reach out, feel free. I'm on LinkedIn and happy to chat, and best of luck.